The deep dive is back, and today we're looking at an executive profile that, honestly, it genuinely makes you wonder if one person can really occupy so many demanding, often, contradictory roles all at once. We are diving deep into the career of Anthony Rafiq Khan.
Yeah, it's pretty unique, isn't it? A singular modern phenomenon, you could say. We're talking about a businessman, sports exec born in '82, and he's applying this like really high-level data analysis, quantitative metrics across two massive professional sports leagues, the NFL and the English Premier League.
But then, and this is the kicker, that same individual is simultaneously the full-time, hands-on creative head, the chief narrative officer, basically, for two major globally broadcast pro wrestling companies, All Elite Wrestling, AEW, and Ring of Honor, ROH.
And that's the mission today, right? To kind of unpack this extreme synthesis and, frankly, the outright contradictions in his dual life.
Exactly. We're examining how one person balances the, let's say, rigid, spreadsheet-driven discipline you need for managing player recruitment for the Jacksonville Jaguars and Fulham FC.
Right, high-stakes stuff.
With the volatile, ego-driven, and, let's face it, entirely scripted drama of wrestling booking. And yeah, he operates within the corporate umbrella owned by his father, the billionaire Shahid Khan.
But the question is, which role demands more? Which part of his background is he leaning on more? Is it the finance brain or the teenage passion?
It's a fascinating paradox. Senior president of football and analytics for an NFL team, and the founder, CEO, and head booker of a multi-million-dollar wrestling company.
And these aren't just titles, are they? These aren't passive roles where he delegates everything. Sources suggest these are high-pressure, really time-intensive jobs.
Okay, let's definitely unpack this. Let's dig into the source material and see if we can find the connection points between this spreadsheet and the body slam. Right, to understand the complexity of the executive today, we really have to start at the beginning, the foundations. Anthony Rafiq Khan, born Champaign-Urbana, Illinois, October 1982. And this is the story of, well, a highly educated son of immense wealth. His father, Shahid Khan, founder of Flex Endgate, the auto parts giant.
A huge company.
Huge. But Tony Khan chose a path that seems to just reject specialization entirely.
And that family context is crucial. You're right. Shahid Khan, Pakistani-American billionaire. He provided the financial bedrock, the backing for pretty much every venture we're going to talk about today. That's, it's a critical piece of perspective when you're evaluating Tony Khan's success.
Sure, the opportunity comes from wealth.
Right. His mother's Ann Carlson. And this, privileged, high-achieving environment, it definitely set the stage for a pretty intense academic path.
And that academic path wasn't frivolous at all, was it? It positioned him perfectly for the analytical side of his career. Graduated University Laboratory High School, 2001, then University of Illinois Urbana-Champaign.
A good school.
Yeah, earning a Bachelor of Science in Finance in 2007.
And that finance degree, from a major institution like Illinois, it implies a really deep understanding of quantitative risk, modeling, capital allocation, valuation, all that stuff.
The toolkit.
Exactly. That's the intellectual toolkit he brings to scouting players, structuring transfer deals, where the objective is maximize asset value, minimize financial risk. That education, it really anchors his executive persona in traditional business discipline.
And this is where it gets, for me, really interesting. Alongside that rigorous finance education, you've got this lifelong obsession, the thing that ultimately became his second career.
Right.
The source material details his profound early involvement in what's known as the Internet Wrestling Community, the IWC.
Yeah, and that detail, honestly, it's arguably the most crucial piece of the whole puzzle. Khan himself has talked about being involved in the IWC via AOL since 1995.
In 95. He would have been, what, 12? 13?
Yeah, exactly. Just a kid. And for anyone who doesn't remember that era, the IWC wasn't just fans watching wrestling. It was this whole subculture dedicated to critiquing the product, debating creative decisions, analyzing trends, writing these complex fantasy booking scenarios.
So he wasn't just watching the show. He was learning the mechanics of storytelling, of the business decisions, from the viewpoint of the most critical fans you could possibly imagine.
That's it precisely. He spent decades essentially in the toughest focus group possible. He learned exactly what modern, really engaged wrestling audiences look for: long-term stories, payoffs to feuds, creative risks that, break the mold.
It gives him a psychological edge, maybe?
I think so. He knows the tropes. He knows the pitfalls. He knows what the most vocal fans are going to jump on and criticize. He went from being like a 12-year-old critic on a message board demanding better booking to being the guy who actually has to deliver that booking on national TV every week. It's completely unprecedented for a wrestling promoter. Never seen anything quite like it.
Okay, so if that IWC exposure was the seed for the wrestling empire, the first major pillar of his executive career was planted firmly in, high-stakes, data-driven American football.
Right.
Khan joined the Jacksonville Jaguars back in July 2012. This was shortly after his dad bought the team. And his current title is Senior President of Football and Analytics.
And that emphasis on analytics in the title, it's definitely deliberate. It connects right back to his finance background, his analytics ventures we'll probably get into.
Yeah.
This isn't just some ceremonial title. The sources really highlight one of his main responsibilities, scouting undrafted free agents, UDFAs.
Okay, for people maybe not super familiar with the NFL structure, how big a deal is that UDFA role, and how does analytics play into it?
Oh, it's absolutely critical for building a successful team, especially over the long haul. The NFL draft gets all the attention. Obviously, that's the main way you get talent. But UDFAs, these are players who don't get drafted, but you sign them afterwards. They're pure value investments.
Low risk, potentially high reward.
Exactly. Low risk, high reward. Khan's analytical focus here isn't just watching game film. It's applying quantitative modeling to players who might have, say, slight deficiencies, but possess really high measurable upside in specific metrics. Maybe they're super fast, but a bit small, or incredibly strong, but didn't get great coaching in college.
Right. Finding the diamonds in the rough using data.
Pretty much. This is where his data-driven approach lets the Jaguars find undervalued assets that maybe other teams, relying more on traditional scouting, might overlook.
And this commitment to scouting, it's apparently so intense. There was a 2024 NFL Films feature that followed him for a full 24 hours during the draft cycle.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it detailed how he was juggling real-time scouting, talk to agents, managing the draft board decisions, all while also overseeing the live broadcast production of AEW's Collision show.
I mean, the time constraint alone just raises this immediate question, doesn't it, about the practical reality of these dual lives. The sources definitely confirm he's deeply committed, but it does make you wonder, is it really possible for one guy to be the hands-on head booker, writing weekly TV, and also be deeply involved in the nitty-gritty details of scouting undrafted free agents? It kind of suggests a cognitive dissonance, maybe. The NFL role, while important, maybe it relies more on these super efficient analytical systems he's built.
Right. Systems doing the heavy lifting.
Possibly. Whereas the wrestling role, that demands constant, non-delegatable creative output. Week in, week out.
And that juggling act, well, sometimes it leads to friction, especially when the data guy has to manage the emotional side of highly paid, sometimes volatile athletes, like that public spat we saw in 2020 with Yannick Ngakoue.
Oh, yeah, that was something. April 2020, they'd been having contract disputes, some friction already bubbling up. And the Jaguars' defensive end, Ngakoue, he goes on Twitter and publicly calls Khan spoiled.
Ouch. That's very public, very personal. An employee calling out the boss's son like that.
Extremely visible, yeah. Not just business, but deeply personal.
And the outcome was, well, swift and analytical, you could say.
Yeah, pretty much textbook. Ngakoue was traded to the Minnesota Vikings later that year. And this whole incident, it's fascinating because it really contrasts his reliance on data, which probably dictates you trade a player when they become a disruptive liability.
For sure, asset.
Right, cut the asset with the impulsive personal criticism he attracts. He managed the conflict by applying a cold business solution. Just remove the volatile piece, regardless of how it looked publicly.
Okay, so if the NFL role is more high-level analysis, quiet scouting behind the scenes, his role with the English soccer club, Fulham FC, that seems to throw him right into the volatile, emotionally charged public spotlight.
Oh, completely. He was named vice chairman and director of football operations for Fulham in February 2017.
And the mandate seemed clear, right? Professionalize their talent acquisition.
Exactly. Focus on identifying, evaluating, recruiting, signing players, specifically using analytics and research. He was basically tasked with taking the success of data-driven American sports management and applying it to the much more, shall we say, unpredictable world of global soccer.
But the results,
yeah,
well, they haven't exactly been predictable, have they? It's kind of cemented Fulham's reputation as a yo-yo club.
Yeah, that term follows them around.
A team that constantly gets promoted to the Premier League, the top tier, only to get immediately relegated back down to the second tier, the championship. And that pattern, it's just disastrous, isn't it? Yeah. Strategically and financially.
We really need to underline the financial side here because it makes his job there exponentially harder than the NFL job. In the NFL, you've got revenue sharing, no relegation. The financial floor is stable. When Fulham gets relegated, they lose the vast majority of their Premier League broadcast money. We're talking millions and millions of pounds. That forces massive budget cuts, player fire sales. This constant cycling, it creates financial trauma and puts immense pressure on the executive making those transfer decisions.
Okay, let's track the specifics of that yo-yo cycle under his watch, because it's quite a ride.
It is. It starts with promotion in the 2017-18 season. They won the playoff final. Key signings like Alexander Mitrovic, the striker, and the young player Ryan Sessegnon breaking out. Things look promising. But then the 2018-19 season was just catastrophic. Despite spending big money, Mitrovic was signed permanently. They brought in Jean-Nicole Seri for a club record fee at the time.
Huge expectations.
Huge. And they finished 19th.
Right.
Relegated, they went through multiple managers, remember, including the high-profile firing of Claudio Ranieri, who'd won the Premier League with Leicester just a few years before.
And the volatility just kept going.
It really did. They got promoted again in 2019-20, again through the grueling playoffs, but the next season in the top flight, 2020-21, third relegation, finished 18th.
It makes you question the analytics model in that environment, doesn't it?
Well, it definitely showed the limits of applying pure analytics in a sport where, team chemistry, coaching philosophy, momentum, that sometimes that stuff just overrides the statistical predictions.
However, the cycle did break, at least temporarily, during the most recent promotion phase we have documented.
That's true. The 2021-22 season was really crucial for his reputation over there. Under manager Marco Silva, Fulham absolutely dominated the championship, won the title, and Mitrovic, who'd struggled before, set an all-time championship record, scoring 43 goals in the season. Just incredible. Yeah. And Khan publicly took credit, stating his conviction in keeping Mitrovic, resisting transfer interest after the player had only scored like 3 goals the previous Premier League season.
So that one paid off.
Yeah.
A counterpoint.
It serves as a counterpoint, yeah. It suggests his personal analytical conviction can sometimes pay off massively, provided he backs the right talent at the right time.
And he also publicly committed to breaking this cycle, right? Said he wanted Fulham to stop being seen as a yo-yo club.
He did. But unlike the relatively insulated Jaguars role, the scrutiny of Fulham management is just intensely personal and often brutal in the UK media and fan base.
Yeah, it feels like a different world of pressure.
It's a completely different culture of accountability. And we saw several flashpoints that maybe showed his thin skin under pressure. There was that controversial Twitter exchange where he told a supporter to go to hell.
Wow.
He later claimed the supporter had been harassing him previously, but still. It's not exactly a measured response you'd expect from an NFL analytics exec.
No. And the criticism from professional pundits, former players, it was scathing sometimes, especially after Ranieri got sacked.
Oh, yeah. BBC pundits, Ian Wright, Chris Sutton, they directly questioned Khan's capability. Wright even suggested his father should step in and remove him from the role.
That's incredible. Publicly calling for him to be fired by his dad.
A level of public disrespect you'd almost never see aimed at an NFL executive in the U.S.
But maybe the most enduring zinger, the one people really remember, came from Sky Sports pundit Jamie Carragher in September 2020.
Carragher was absolutely savage, yeah. He called Khan a clown for tweeting critical comments about his own players during a match.
During a match.
And Carragher labeled Fulham's transfer history under Khan a right mess. This whole thing reportedly really angered the manager at the time, Scott Parker, you can imagine.
Yeah, highlighting that friction between the analytical desire to critique assets publicly and the manager's need to keep the dressing room together.
Absolutely. That juxtaposition is key. In the NFL, he's kind of the quiet analyst, signing UDFAs behind the scenes. In the Premier League, he becomes this volatile public figure, getting into Twitter spats, drawing fire from huge media names.
It does make you wonder, does he embrace that volatility sometimes? Does he know it draws attention, kind of like wrestling drama does? Is it part of the strategy?
That's a really interesting question. Hard to know for sure.
Okay, let's maybe step back from the actual playing fields for a moment and look at the strategic infrastructure that seems to bind his analytical brain to his entertainment goals.
Right.
Because his diversification into tech and talent management seems to provide the connective tissue for this whole multifaceted career.
Yeah, I think that's right. And it really starts with TruMedia Networks. Khan owns it. He's the chairman. It's a Boston-based firm he acquired back in 2015.
And what do they do exactly?
Their specialty isn't just gathering sports data, it's analytics engineering. Think of them as the data plumbers. They build the pipelines and the tools that modern sports teams need to actually use all the metrics they collect effectively.
So he's not just using data. He owns the tool set itself. That's significant. And the client list, that speaks volumes, doesn't it?
It really does. High-profile clients include ESPN, the NFL itself uses them, Zebra Technologies, who do player tracking, and reportedly over 60% of all Major League Baseball clubs. So this really solidifies his identity as a key player in the whole quantitative sports revolution globally. And the insight here, maybe, is that the same data infrastructure he's selling to the NFL.
Yeah.
Might secretly be informing AEW's demographic targeting, ticket sales projections, maybe even creative adjustments based on, minute-by-minute viewership analysis.
So the creative decisions might be less pure passion and more calculated, data-informed risks.
It's definitely possible. It suggests a layer of analytical rigor even behind the wrestling storylines.
Okay, so TruMedia gives him the quantitative blueprint. But his next big strategic investment moved him squarely into the world of creative media and talent management. That provides the qualitative framework, maybe?
I think so. In 2018, Khan and his family helped fund Activist Artists Management. It's a talent management and advisory firm. This was a really critical step away from just pure sports, positioning him firmly in the broader entertainment landscape.
And he personally invested.
Yeah, made a significant personal investment and established the Activist Content and Venture Fund.
And what does that fund actually target? What kind of investments?
It focuses on media, entertainment, hospitality, consumer products, services, tech. Basically, the whole entertainment ecosystem.
Okay, I see the synergy now. It's becoming clearer. He's got the NFL background for structure, the finance degree for valuation, the Fulham experience for handling global market volatility,
Right.
the TruMedia network for the deep quantitative analysis, and now Activist for talent insights and media management. It's like this entire tapestry forms the perfect strategic foundation for launching something huge and global in entertainment.
Like a professional wrestling promotion.
Exactly.
Yeah, he basically built this holistic executive framework that, in theory, allows him to pivot pretty seamlessly between, say, a $100 million NFL salary cap negotiation and, writing the script for a 3-hour live drama show.
It's quite the setup.
Yeah.
Which brings us, to the ultimate passion project, it seems.
Oh, yeah.
Professional wrestling empire. Driven by that lifelong IWC thing we talked about, Tony Khan officially launched All Elite Wrestling, AEW, January 2019.
Followed months of trademark filings, rumors flying, late 2018.
And the structure of his involvement here is pretty unique in modern wrestling, isn't it?
It really is. He's listed as the founder, co-owner, president, CEO, executive producer, and the head booker. The financial backing, as we said, came from his father, but Tony Khan is presented as the undisputed creative and operational driving force.
Okay, we need to clarify for listeners, maybe not deep into wrestling jargon, what is a head booker? Because this sounds like the role that puts the heaviest creative load on him.
For sure. The head booker is, well, essentially the chief narrative officer, the showrunner, the head writer, the final script editor for all the TV shows, the live events, the pay-per-views.
So they decide who wins, who loses?
Who wins, who loses, who feuds with whom, what the long-term story arcs are going to be. In short, yeah, if AEW is a TV show, Tony Khan is the showrunner.
Wow. Okay, that puts an immense, non-delegated creative burden on top of managing high-stakes football operations on 2 different continents.
Yeah.
How hands-on is he really with that creative process?
Well, sources describe his management style there as highly involved. He reportedly writes the shows, creates the fundamental story arcs, and personally approves all the televised segments before they actually air.
All of them.
That's the claim. Now, established, high-profile talent, wrestlers like Chris Jericho or Jon Moxley, they're often given significant freedom in scripting their own promos, their speeches in the ring.
Right, their character work.
Exactly. But Khan retains final authority over the outcome of the matches, the overall direction of the story. It's a very different model from traditional sports where, the CEO hires the coach and delegates the game plan. Here, he is the strategist and the playwright, rolled into one.
So that level of creative control means every character arc, every title change, every twist, every failure, it ultimately flows through the same person who might have just approved a multi-million-pound transfer for Fulham FC hours earlier.
Pretty much. It's kind of mind-boggling when you think about it. And while he usually stays behind the scenes, he does occasionally inject himself into the programming, usually to add some weight to a moment, showing his commitment to the narrative. We saw a big example of this in late April 2024, didn't we?
Yeah, on their main show, Dynamite,
Yeah.
he was physically attacked in a storyline segment. It was clearly part of the show by this villainous group, the Elite.
Right. And putting himself on camera like that, actively participating in the fiction, even briefly, it's a calculated risk, you know?
How so?
Well, it gets immediate attention, gives that group, the elite, instant heat, as they call it, makes them bigger villains, and it confirms to the audience that the CEO is invested enough in the story that he's willing to take a fictional beating for the sake of the narrative.
Interesting. Okay, so beyond AEW, he then dramatically expanded his wrestling empire in March 2022 with a pretty major strategic acquisition.
Yes, that was Ring of Honor, ROH. He bought it from Sinclair Broadcast Group. And this was a critical move, not just for, business competition, but for expanding his whole creative and asset portfolio.
And what did that purchase include?
It included ROH's entire video library, decades of matches, and shows all the brand assets, logos, trademarks, and all the intellectual property associated with ROH.
And the structure of how he bought it is important too, from a corporate strategy angle, right?
Yeah, that's a key detail. It was bought through a separate corporate entity, wholly owned by Khan, but distinct from AEW. It operates as a standalone sister promotion.
Okay, so why do that? What's the strategic purpose?
Well, he's openly using ROH, or seems to be, as a potential developmental platform, like a proving ground for younger or less experienced talent, maybe not ready for AEW's main shows yet, or maybe a place to continue storylines that don't quite fit the main TV narratives.
Ah, okay, so it creates this clear organizational flow, almost like how Major League Baseball uses minor league teams.
Exactly. It mimics that kind of structure, but applied to pro wrestling storytelling and talent development. Gives him more places to put talent, more content for streaming, more assets overall.
All right, now we get to maybe the most contentious part of his whole career, the reception. How people view his leadership, and particularly in the wrestling world, where opinions are, let's say, often louder than data.
Yeah, that's an understatement.
His reputation seems incredibly polarized. It swings violently between, like, visionary genius and absolute liability, depending on who you ask and when.
It really does. But let's start with the critical acclaim, because it's significant and you can't ignore it. The most respected industry publication, the Wrestling Observer newsletter, they've lauded his business and creative work repeatedly.
Yeah, the awards kind of back that up, don't they? Promoter of the Year, 4 years in a row, 2019, 2021, 22.
4 consecutive years. And simultaneously, Best Booker for 3 of those years, 20, 21, and 22. That level of sustained critical success, it confirms he found a formula, especially initially, that really resonated deeply with critics and fans who were looking for something different.
That's a huge validation.
It's a profound recognition of his ability to craft compelling TV and build a viable business in a tough market. And crucially, the sources also detail how the talent he manages, his wrestlers, often defend his work. High-profile performers consistently praise his passion and his business savvy.
Do you give us some examples, particularly the one where a big name kind of countered that common criticism about him just being a rich kid playing promoter?
Yeah, Chris Jericho, a huge star he signed early on. Jericho publicly defended Khan against that notion that he was just a money mark. You know that term?
Yeah, the derogatory term for a wealthy fan.
Right.
Just throwing money away on a vanity project.
Exactly. Jericho specifically said Khan is very driven and he's very passionate and he knows what he wants, and emphasized he's not a pushover in any way, shape, or form. Jericho's point was that AEW is being run as a genuine, viable business enterprise, not just a hobby.
That's strong endorsement from a respected veteran. And others point to his enthusiasm, bridging that gap between the analytical exec and the passionate fan.
Right. Jim Ross, the legendary commentator who works for him, called him the hardest working, most enthusiastic, educated wrestling fan I've ever encountered. And he suggested that infectious enthusiasm makes it fun for people to work there, which is a huge asset in a high-stress creative field.
Sure, morale matters.
Big time. And Jon Moxley, another top star, echoed that, describing Khan as approachable, business savvy, and just incredibly passionate.
Okay, so celebrated by peers, critics, for his work ethic, his initial success. But this is where the contradiction really emerges, doesn't it? Especially when his creative choices or his managerial responses clash with public expectation or, just basic decorum sometimes.
Yeah, the discipline he might show in the boardroom seems to sometimes fail him. when managing volatile creative egos or handling public criticism.
Which brings us to the big swole controversy. December 2021. She was a former AEW wrestler. She left the company and cited a lack of diversity and structure as reasons for her departure.
Right, and Khan's response was very public, very controversial.
And like those Fulham Twitter spats, it was blunt and really personal, wasn't it?
Extremely. He tweeted controversially that her contract wasn't renewed basically because he felt her wrestling wasn't good enough.
Oof. Publicly.
Publicly, it drew immediate media fire, widespread criticism. People felt it was unnecessarily harsh, way too public, and really contradicted the supportive, talent-friendly image he often tries to project.
It kind of mirrors that cold analytical decision-making we saw with Ngaku in the NFL.
Exactly. Cut the asset.
But applied to a subjective, creative context. And the backlash was intense.
Very intense. And this kind of managerial style, the blunt public dismissal, maybe a perceived lack of diplomacy, it's led to some harsh critiques from longtime industry figures who question his maturity as a showrunner.
Like Eric Bischoff's critique. He ran WCW against WWE back in the 90s.
Right. Bischoff, who has his own history with Khan, argued pretty pointedly that Khan writes for a Tony Khan of 14 years old.
Yes.
Implying his booking caters too much to his own sort of teenage IWC fan sensibilities and online fantasy booking desires, rather than making commercially mature decisions needed for a mainstream mass audience. A harsh critique.
And other pundits have chimed in, too, questioning his management, handling of backstage stuff.
Yeah, Dave Scherer, another longtime wrestling journalist, has criticized Khan's overall management style, how he handles backstage issues. He specifically called one televised segment in 2023 vile and disgusting, and argued it strayed too far from what pro wrestling should be.
So the argument from critics is that his passion sometimes overrides the necessary discipline required to run a multi-million-dollar global TV product.
That's the core of the criticism, yeah. And this tension, this tightrope walk between business discipline and managing creative chaos, it really climaxed spectacularly in 2023 with the whole CM Punk situation, the termination of his contract.
Right. Punk was arguably his biggest star, huge name recognition, but notoriously volatile. This followed a very high-profile backstage altercation, a fight basically, forcing Khan to make a really definitive decision about an extremely valuable but extremely problematic asset.
And the response to Khan's decision to fire him? Massively divided.
How so? What were the two sides?
Well, on one side, you had many critics and fans praising Khan for finally taking a definitive, decisive business stance, saying he finally showed some steel in managing volatile talent. Some sources even highlighted that he deserved credit for making the move immediately, right after the incident, rather than delaying it until after a big upcoming pay-per-view just to maximize profit from Punk's last match.
So, showing some business discipline overriding short-term financial gain.
Exactly. An unexpected level of cold calculation, perhaps, but the other side argued the whole controversy was really a failure of management leading up to that point.
That he let it get that bad in the first place.
Precisely. Critics were quick to point out that the situation, the backstage tensions, had been allowed to fester and escalate. They questioned his overall leadership skills in maintaining a healthy, disciplined locker room culture before it blew up.
Right.
One source even noted the speed of the PR collapse afterwards. Khan could do the right thing, terminate Punk, and 4 hours later totally destroy the goodwill he had garnered through some awkward public statements he made explaining the decision.
So it highlights that central non-analytical managerial dilemma, doesn't it? How do you reconcile the quantitative decision, cut the volatile, high-cost asset, with the qualitative need to enforce creative discipline and maintain a functioning, healthy workplace?
Yeah. And it really proves that the same guy who's celebrated for finding undrafted free agents using spreadsheets is the same guy who has to manage a roster full of intense egos and raw interpersonal drama, a world where, frankly, the spreadsheet offers zero solutions. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, we've spent this deep dive really analyzing a career that just spans so many dimensions of modern executive life. Let's try and synthesize this, summarize the just colossal scope of Tony Khan's influence.
Yeah, he's undeniably forcing us to kind of redefine what a corporate executive can even be in this era. We've documented his constant oscillation between, on one hand, complex, data-heavy NFL scouting.
Right, grounded in quantitative analysis, owning TruMedia.
Exactly, and running a global soccer club, Fulham, where the financial risks are just staggering and the public scrutiny is absolutely intense.
And then, simultaneously, he's operating not one but two professional wrestling promotions, AEW and ROH, where he's the fully hands-on creative booker, the playwright, managing the narrative, managing the often highly volatile talent.
And his commitment seems genuine, right? Evidenced by those sources showing him actively scouting for the Jags while also overseeing live AEW broadcasts. He's putting in the hours.
He seems to be.
He's an executive defined by his willingness, maybe even his need, to live right at that intersection of quantitative analysis and pure, unadulterated passion project management. He uses the finance degree to manage assets and mitigate risk, and he uses that deep IWC history to write the emotional stories that drive his second career.
So he proves it's possible, maybe, to apply analytical rigor to wildly different fields.
It seems possible, yeah, however demanding it clearly is. Provided, perhaps, that you're willing to endure the inevitable and often immense public scrutiny and controversy that comes along with trying to do it all.
So what does this all mean, then, for the future of this kind of multifaceted executive leadership? Is this a new model?
Well, it certainly means the traditional model of hyperspecialization is being challenged. Khan is forcing us to acknowledge that maybe the future belongs to the CEO who can master both the spreadsheet, the data, the analytics, the tools, and the script, the narrative, managing perception, the human element.
But there's a but, isn't there?
There's always a but. The recurring struggles may be with diplomacy at Fulham or handling talent blow-ups like the CM Punk situation. They suggest that the limits of this model are always found in that human element. Data can tell you who to cut, maybe, but it can't tell you how to manage the resulting emotional fallout effectively.
Which leads us perfectly to our provocative final thought for you, the listener, to consider. In the highly regulated, structured world of the NFL, Tony Khan's job is fundamentally about scouting and analytics, finding hidden value with metrics, minimizing risk.
Right. Numbers driven.
But in the wild, volatile, often chaotic world of pro wrestling, his job is writing the script, manufacturing the drama, managing the narrative, dealing with egos. So the question is, which of these two incredibly demanding endeavors really demands more of his fundamental finance and analytical background, and which demands more of that teenage passion for the internet wrestling community? You decide.
That tension right there remains the absolute core of his unprecedented career.
Thank you for joining us for the deep dive. We'll see you next time.